Welcome to Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 238, as we are continuing our Canadian Whisky Tournament Part 2. Coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas on Friday, January 16th, 2026, where it is currently 54 degrees and sunshiny. A year ago, I conducted a brief Canadian Whisky Tournament with 5 of the most popular Canadian blends: Crown Royal Fine Deluxe, Canadian Club 1858, Black Velvet, Canadian Mist, and Seagram's VO. Canadian Club 1858 won that contest, but now we are moving up from the bottom shelf to the next level of Canadian whiskey. So far, we have examined the Seagram's family of VO, with VO Gold and VO Black, and pitted them against VO. So those three competed against each other, and the Gold won that family feud. Now we're moving on to the Canadian Club family. Today we'll have a face-off between Canadian Club 1858 and Canadian Club 100% Rye. So these two Canadian clubs in a family feud. I have previously reviewed both of these whiskeys, Canadian Club 1858, and that was about a year ago, and then Canadian Club Rye about 5 or 6 months ago. So the reviews are out there, but now we're going to do the head-to-head competition. So what are the rules? I compare these two whiskeys along with the same categories that I used to review them, but the winner is found through comparing the nose, taste, mouthfeel, burn, and finish. It's all about which whiskey do I like to drink the most. The test is conducted blind using blacked out glasses here, and I've mixed them up so I don't know which whiskey's in which glass. But glass number 1, it's on the bottom, is the 1858. Glass number 2 is the Rye. You'll be able to see those numbers on the bottom of the glass when I tip them to smell and drink, but I won't be able to see them. So first of all, let's look at the history of these two brands. The brand itself was founded in 1858 in Detroit by Hiram Walker, who had to move it across the river into Canada due to an early form of prohibition in Detroit. The brand is now owned by the Japanese company Suntory, of course. The 1858 brand traces its roots all the way back to the founding of this brand, hence the name, 1858. This is an 80 proof blended Canadian whiskey. I gave this a score of 80 and a drinkability of an A-. So even though it had a fairly low score, I enjoyed drinking this. Now, it's thin, granted, but I enjoyed the flavors, and that's why it won that initial Canadian tournament. The 100% Rye, I gave it a score of 84 and a letter grade of A. I really like this. However, I was conducting a rye tournament, national rye tournament, on my Texas Rye Whiskey Studies channel. And in the first round, this lost to the Jim Beam 80 proof rye. And that shocked me. I really thought this was going to beat Jim Beam, but did the test blind, and that's what you get. So, Canadian Club Rye was a loser, but I still like it. Still would drink it. So, in the case of history, though, the rye whiskey came out in 2014. So this is actually a fairly recent addition to Canadian Club, although the way Canadian Club made their whiskeys is there was a heavy reliance on rye anyway. Their grading system for, what's a rye whiskey, what's a corn whiskey, is very different from American whiskeys, but this label came out in 2014. All right, so history is going to go to the 1858. Bottle, label, and marketing. The bottles are the identical shape. However, 1858 is in a brown glass bottle, and I tend to favor colored glass for whatever reason. There's advantages to both. Here you get to see in the clear glass, the color of the whiskey itself. But Canadian whiskey, much like Scotch, can add coloring, so color, who knows. But the labels are also very similar. You've got that royal stamp of approval on there. But, green label here for rye makes perfect sense. Otherwise, the neck wrapper is basically the same. So these are very similar for bottles and labels. But, when you research commercials for these two whiskeys, there's actually quite a few commercials for the rye. Now, they're older. Okay, so you're looking at 7 to 10 years ago or so. But there was a lot of hoo-ha about this whiskey when it came out, apparently. Now, there are also some commercials for this one. They tend to be even older. So bottle, label, and marketing, I think it's going to be a tie because, the bottles are so similar. Labels are similar. I like colored glass, but marketing scheme, I think when we look at availability, we'll see that this one is more heavily marketed. It's more readily available. So, but bottle, label, and marketing gets a tie. Appearance of these whiskeys, well, because this is, brown glass and the whiskey in the glasses is in black glasses, we can't really do that. So I look back at my notes for when I reviewed both of these, and the rye was a slightly darker shade than the 1858. So I prefer darker whiskeys, so rye gets the win there. Composition, there is no detailed mash bill out there for the 1858, but it does use rye, barley, malted barley, and corn, all distilled separately and then blended in the barrels. The 100% rye, though, gives its mash bill right there. This is 100% rye. It's just, that's what it is. Now, there's no age statement on either of these, but by law in Canada, they've got to be a minimum of 3 years old. So composition, I think the rye whiskey is going to win. Price, value, and availability. The 1858 is available at Total Wine in Fort Worth for $16.99 for a 1.75 or $7.99 for a 3.75, but there's no 750 available. And they did not have the rye. Specs, 1756 for a 1.75, and they had a 750 for 1157, but they did not have the rye. Goody goody, $16.99 for the 1.75 and $10.99 for this bottle. The rye was $21.99 right there. So Goody Goody's the only store that had the rye. So 1858 wins price and availability for sure. Although I definitely think I prefer the rye flavor and everything. So I think this is, a better value because it's what I want. But it's so hard to find. So 1858 for the win for price, value, and availability. Versatility. Neat on the rocks and mixer. I'm going to side with the rye on this one. I think it's got the stronger flavors. I think it would, possibly hold up to ice if you wanted to put it on ice. And I did put it in a cocktail, just a simple mixed drink with, I think, some ginger ale, and that worked. So for versatility, the rye is going to win that one. All right, let's get to the whiskeys themselves. Let's nose these things. I will start left to right. Not much of a nose. I got all kinds of sinus issues going on anyway. Vague sweetness. Very vague. Maybe a little bit of wood. Not much on the nose there. The whiskey on my right. Even less of a nose. So I'm going to say the one on the left had the stronger nose. So frequently, not 100% of the time, I'll start drinking with the weaker nose. So this is the one on the right. And I like the taste. Again, I'm a fan of Canadian Club. People like to make jokes about Canadian whiskey, but I actually like the flavors. I get oak, sweetness of the corn, a little bit of spice. I don't know if it's a psyop or what, but I always get a little bit of maple with Canadian Club. It is thin. Mouth feels thin. No real burn. You know, there's some mouth tingles there. Finish doesn't last long. So yeah, you know, this is an inexpensive whiskey and it tastes like it, but nonetheless, the flavors that are there, I enjoy. So, okay, that's enjoyable. If I had to guess, just after that first sip, I'm going to say it's glass number 1 and the 1858. Moving on to the glass on my left. It's had the stronger nose, but not by much. What I noticed, first of all, is a little bit better mouthfeel on that. The flavors are good. Still no burn. Still weak on the finish, but the mouthfeel was improved on that one. Both of these are 80 proof, so, you know, I don't know. And there's no real age statement on them, so not sure how that worked. I think that one's got a little bit more going on. Not by much, though. It's going to be very difficult. I like both of them. There's a slight difference in the taste. The one on the right is perhaps a bit more shiny. The one on the left is a bit deeper. So put it in musical terms, the one on the right is a tenor, the one on the left is a baritone. But the mouthfeel on the one on the left is kind of carrying the weight. It's definitely not as thin as the one on the right. And the one on the left did have the stronger nose. I'm getting some tingles now, but neither of them has a great finish. So this is going to be very difficult, but I think I'm going to go with the one on the left as the winner. But taste-wise, I'm going to say it's a tie. But mouthfeel, burn, and finish definitely went to the left. So the left also had the nose. So I'm going to declare the one on the left to be the winner. Which is which? I tend to think that the one on the left is the rye, so I think that's glass number 2. Let me see. It is glass number 2. The one on the right, glass number 1, is the 1858. So the rye won. Here's the winner, but not by much. I mean, that was closer than I thought it would be. So it was really the mouthfeel and the nose that edged out the 1858. So we have a winner, and did correctly guess which is which. So sometimes we do a cocktail for the winner. So let me see if I can make a cocktail real quick. I'll be right back. And I'm back. Made an old-fashioned. Now, I've never made an old-fashioned with Canadian Club rye. I have, mixed it with, I think, Canada Dry ginger ale and maybe a 7-Up. But that's the extent of my mixing with Canadian Club. So I think the flavors in the Canadian Club rye are strong enough to make an old-fashioned. Let's see. This has Angostura bitters, a couple of dashes, ounce and a half of Canadian Club rye. It's got an orange peel in there, and it's got one cherry in there. The sweetener of choice that I use is maple syrup, which is perfect, I think, for a Canadian whiskey. Cheers. And that's pretty good. That'll work. Absolutely. Huh. For whatever reason, the orange is very forward on this one. I didn't do anything different than normal. So maybe the orange really works well with the Canadian Club. All right, that's the winner. And I can recommend making a little mixed drink with soda, ginger ale preferably, or an old-fashioned with Canadian Club rye. Now, coming up soon on this channel, 2 new features, I hope. First up is an American Catechism series that I am calling Defenders of the Faith Bible Studies. In the first episode, we'll look at Genesis 14 and Abram's militia. Should do that this weekend. Next week, I hope to also start another new series here on Stab the Dragon called Intro to Whiskey, examining my whiskey journey and asking some basic questions. The first one is, what is whiskey? And then, I'll explain a little bit about whiskey journey. The second episode should be what is Canadian whiskey, since we are doing a Canadian Whisky Tournament, right? So this Intro to Whiskey series is really mainly for me. I just want to make sure I know what I'm doing with whiskey, and that I'm sharing my ignorance with all y'all. So, also, I hope to put together a new series called Classical Lit and the Gospel, where I examine some classics of the Western literary canon in light of the Gospel. And of course, I'll be continuing this Canadian Whisky Tournament through January into February and possibly a little bit into March. For now, this is Stab the Dragon, out here.